Israel has declared it is at war after Hamas militants confirmed they fired thousands of rockets from Gaza overnight in a major multi-front surprise attack. Sirens wailed across Israel, where health ministry officials say more than 20 people were killed in the land, sea, and air attack. Civilians in the south and central regions are being warned to shelter in place. Israel says it has mobilized tens of thousands of reservists, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed Hamas will pay a heavy price. Imtiaz Tayyab has the latest.
Good morning. Well, at least 22 Israelis have been killed and hundreds more wounded in an unprecedented attack by Hamas fighters inside Israel. It started with an early dawn rocket attack that lasted for nearly half an hour. Hamas say at least 5,000 were fired from inside the Gaza Strip, landing as far into Israel as Tel Aviv, causing widespread damage. But what followed next has rocked Israel's defenses. Heavily armed Hamas fighters breached the Gaza barrier wall with southern Israel and stormed the streets of nearby border towns, setting Israeli tanks on fire in an assault Hamas are calling Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. Hamas posted footage online of what it said was bodies of Israeli soldiers brought into Gaza by its fighters. CBS News has not been able to verify the footage. But Israel's military have confirmed that heavily armed gunmen had crossed the Gaza border fence in several locations. And there are also reports that Israeli citizens have been taken hostage. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Hamas will pay a, quote, unprecedented price for this major attack, while Hamas is calling on other armed groups to join the fight, as hundreds of Palestinian families flee their homes over fears of what will come next.
Vladimir Putin has announced the successful test of a new generation of nuclear-powered cruise missile. It's part of a program unveiled in 2018 to develop intercontinental and hypersonic missiles. This is file video of a current Russian cruise missile. The latest version is known by NATO as the SCC-X9 Skyfall. Its nuclear propulsion allows for near unlimited range, and the low-flying stealth projectile could be capable of outmaneuvering missile defense systems. Here's President Putin speaking on Thursday in Sochi.
I want to assure everyone that at the moment, the response from Russia to a nuclear strike on its territory is absolutely unacceptable for any potential aggressor. Because from the moment the enemy missile launch is detected, no matter where it comes from any point in the world's oceans or from any territory, in a retaliatory counterstrike, so many hundreds of our missiles will appear in the air that not a single enemy will have a chance of survival in several directions at once.
The U.S. on Thursday said it shot down an armed Turkish drone that was operating near its troops in Syria, the first time Washington has brought down an aircraft of a NATO ally. Here's Pentagon Press Secretary, Air Force Brigadier General Pat Ryder.
U.S. commanders assessed that the UAV, which was now less than a half a kilometer from U.S. forces, to be a potential threat, and U.S. F-16 fighters subsequently shot down the UAV in self-defense at approximately 11:40 local time. It's important to point out that no U.S. forces were injured during the incident. We have no indication that that Turkey was intentionally targeting U.S. forces. Turkey is one of our strongest and most valued NATO allies, and that partnership continues and will continue. So this is certainly a regrettable incident.
This video showed smoke rising from various sites thought to have been targeted by Turkey in a Kurdish-controlled region. A Turkish Defense Ministry official said the drone shot down by the coalition did not belong to the Turkish armed forces, without saying whose property it was. U.S. support for Kurdish forces in northern Syria has long caused tension with NATO ally Turkey, which views them as a wing of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, the group which claimed Sunday's attack in Ankara near government buildings. Separately, aerial footage released by Turkey's National Intelligence Agency on Thursday showed various drone attacks on what it said were Kurdish targets in Syria.
The threat from China that is forcing a major shift in the United States military tonight. The Army is reportedly cutting 10% of its special forces, about 3,000 troops. It includes Green Beret commandos, some of the military's most feared and most highly trained soldiers. They are used for the most dangerous missions around the world, like taking out Osama bin Laden. And this all comes as fewer Americans are signing up to serve our country in the military. News Nation's Evan Lambert is live with us tonight with more on these controversial cuts. Evan, these are really creating quite a backlash among some branches of the military.
Elizabeth, they are. The proposed cuts, they are significant. We're talking about 10% of the current Army Special Forces. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. This is an apparent shift in strategy from the kind of warfare fought with special forces in Afghanistan and Iraq to the larger number of ground forces needed to counter the current threat from China. Army Special Forces, including the famous Green Berets, have played significant roles in clandestine military missions throughout our history. More broadly, the Special Operations Command, which includes Green Berets and Navy SEALs, Marines, and Air Force Special Forces, were behind the killing of Osama bin Laden and ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and the daring hospital rescue of soldier Jessica Lynch, who was captured by Iraqi forces in 2003. Further back in history, they trained South Vietnamese fighters in the Vietnam War. The number of U.S. Special Forces across the military has grown 56% since 9/11, but the wars in which they were most used, like in the Middle East, are over. This week, Secretary of the Army Christine Wormuth appeared to confirm these pending cuts, telling reporters in part, quote, "Our SOF, or Special Forces, grew considerably over the last 20 years, given the kinds of wars we were fighting. Meantime, the overall Army has gotten smaller, so I think there's some room to make some very modest, targeted reductions there." Elizabeth?
Happening because we are now need to shift strategically toward China and have less need for special forces, or is this because we are recruiting less, the recruiting issues around people not signing up any longer to be part of the military?
Yeah, Elizabeth, really, it is a combination of both, essentially. But really, the special forces had been used so much in those wars in the Middle East. And now this shifting threat to China, where their military is so large, is one that requires ground forces. And as you mentioned, Elizabeth, there is already lots of pushback here. Congressman Mike Waltz of Florida, he's a retired Green Beret. He said in a statement just out yesterday, quote, "I am stunned and appalled by reports indicating the U.S. Army will cut 3,000 troops from its special operations ranks as a means to manage their worst recruiting crisis since the Vietnam War." So right now, this is something that Wormuth, the Army Secretary, says is going to have to go before the committees, the oversight committees in Congress, before it is final.